Let's go to another question in our audience now on a completely different subject from Job Gilroy.
In 2008, there have been a number of video games which have been banned from sale or refused classification. This is due to the fact that Australia does not have a R18 rating for video games. What does the panel think of the fact that the Australian government actively censors what its citizens can and can't see?
OK, a little bit of background for the uninitiated. One of those banned video games is called Fallout 3. If I'm correct, it's a video game set in a post-apocalyptic Washington, D.C., in which people come out after a long period of time and start killing everybody. And those people, as I understand it, have a little attachment to their arms where they can self-inject intravenous drugs to make them kill more people. Is that correct? Is that a fair summary?
That's correct, yes.
OK. All right, so here's the question. And I'll throw it to Heather Ridout first. Should there be censorship of these things, or should people over the age of 18 be able to buy these things with an R rating and play them, even though, as we've just heard, they're obviously extremely violent?
Look, I mean, I think if they're over 18, they'll find one way or another to get hold of it, Tony, and they do. But, I mean, as a mother of 3 kids, 2 of whom spend an awful lot of time playing these sorts of games. I mean, I just find the whole thing appalling, the sort of minds that come up with this stuff. Now, Grand Theft Auto was one of the more famous games that seemed to turn everyone into a car thief, you know. My children, thankfully, didn't do that. But, you know, I mean, I'm not a censorship girl. I had a view about the Henson issues. I like his photography. I think it's very beautiful, and I think there is art, and there's a way you've got to find a different prism to look through these things. But violent games, violence, it breeds violence. It's not nice.
Yeah, OK, Nick Xenophon.
Well, look, I think we need to listen to the psychologists who've looked into this, and this is different in the sense it's interactive. People get immersed in these games, and I think that there's a real risk. I think as a society we can live without it.
But does the risk warrant censorship?
Look, I think it does. When you look at some of the concerns of what it can trigger in some minds, then I think we just need to be a bit cautious about it.
Mark Arbib.
Look, they must be, to actually ban them, they must be terrible games. So, I mean, personally, I probably think an R rating for over the age of 18 is fine because, as you said, if you want to play the game, you're going to get it somehow. But I mean, I haven't seen the games, so I really can't judge whether they should be banned or not.
But the big question is a question of principle in a way. That is, these things are being banned because there isn't a rating system on video games. There's a rating system on videos. There's no rating system on video games. So that means anyone of any age can buy them, and if they're obviously considered to be dangerous to young people, they're not available to be sold here.
Well, as I said, I think there's a strong argument to actually have a rating system. For all games, no doubt about it, and not just an R rating, but ratings just the same as ratings for the movies, just the same as you would have for video. So, yeah, I think there's a strong argument there.
Yeah, you can't. Sorry.
Barnaby, go ahead.
Yeah, you can't say just because you can see it, therefore you should be allowed to see it. Otherwise, you legalise snuff movies and all sorts of profane things which I don't think take our society ahead. You know, we had the thing with, I think it was amateurs, is that the right term, where people can actually go out and rape people. Now, this is not acceptable. You have to draw a line, otherwise you must take into account not that where a certain group of society is, but those who are vulnerable to influence, how they would be affected by that. And if you don't, well, then you suffer what comes next. I too have 4 kids, and you've got to think, I want these kids to grow up in quiet, unaffected streets. And if there's someone playing a video game where they're raping someone, I'm not feeling good about the place. And so, yeah, so knock it out.
Christine Jackman.
I agree. We urgently need a rating system. And I'm not a pro-censorship person myself either. I think that, first and foremost, it's a guide for parents. My kids aren't quite old enough to be doing that yet, but it's the first step towards knowing at least you can pick up the thing and think, this isn't something that they should be watching or playing. But can I throw it back on you as a journalist? Job, why do you want to play it?
Why do I want to play it?
Why would you want to play it?
It's not a question
I'm not trying to, crucify you. I'm just interested. Why would you want to play it?
I want to play the game because it's a story-driven experience that you could experience in a movie, in the cinemas, on a DVD, something like that. However, the Australian government won't let me.
And how many hours do you think you or your friends would be playing those sorts of games a day?
It differs between everyone. I mean, the average gamer is anyone nowadays. The Queen has a Wii. Meanwhile, children play the same games that the Queen can play.
We don't want to think about the Queen having a Wii.
A Nintendo Wii.
I think
It's a console. It's not a question of who's playing them or how long they're playing them. It's a question of whether we're allowed to as adults.
this is a classic example, I think.
Well, no, I mean, one of the points that I think needs to be made here is I believe it's true to say the average gamer is over the age of 30, which is quite, or around the age of 30, which is quite an interesting thing to contemplate.
It's also where it gets into that it's, you know, where ethics struggles to keep up with technology in so many different areas. And I think that's where we actually have to ask ourselves, do we actually genuinely know? In the past, we could say, you read a book, you see, you know, naked women or something in a magazine, you go and see a movie and it may or may not affect behaviour. I don't think we have caught up to what these sorts of interactive, experiential games can do to behaviour, except to know it's not like just a purely visual experience. So we do need to be cautious.
All right, we've got another gentleman with his hand up down the front here. If we can get a microphone to you, we'll find out what you've got to say.
Thank you. I'm just wondering, I'm not for violent games myself and I'm not a gamer, but in terms of restricting people's right to choose and to entertainment, I think that that's an argument that is for pokies or for legalisation of pokies, aside from the economic tax benefits that the government receives, is that people should have the right to choose if they want to play those type of games. So how can you make that distinction between the pokies and then games which might be socially unacceptable when gambling itself, in our society particularly, has so many more social problems than what may be caused by violent games?
Well, if I understand Nick Xenophon's position, it's pretty good. You ban them both, correct?
Well, it's consistent. Look at the harm, look at the potential harm. And look, a few months before he died, I spoke to Don Dunstan at length. No one could accuse Don Dunstan, late South Australian Premier, of being a wowser. He said he thinks people. He told me he thought people should be able to choose their own poison, so long as it didn't impact on the lives of others. And we know with poker machines, there are something like 250,000 Australians with a gambling problem because of the pokies, and each of them, on average, affects the lives of 7 others. That's why I think it's a big problem, and we need to tackle it head on.